welcome to a new video. Today I am in my studio and the focus of my art session is going to be on creating a whole lot of new backgrounds to work on in my sketchbook. So the way that I work in my sketchbooks is usually not a linear process. I don't usually work on one piece right through till it's finished. I often don't just work on one sketchbook. I like to go in and add bits and pieces and work on things in a pretty sort of haphazard kind of way. And I find that that definitely lowers the stakes and takes the pressure off. So sometimes I'll just come into the studio like today, grab a whole bunch of my sketchbooks or sometimes loose sheets of paper and just get started in a variety of different ways so that I have something to work on when I come back on another day. So I have all these sketchbooks in front of me and there's a few different types. Some have watercolour paper in them, some have mixed media paper in them. There are a variety of different qualities. That doesn't really matter though. I just want to have a few different surfaces to work on. So let me put this stash aside and we'll start with the main sketchbook that I've been working at the moment and the sketchbook that featured in my last two videos. So this is the Fabriano sketchbook and I've just opened it up to a new page. It is starting to get to the point where a ball clip is a handy thing to have just to clip the page. So for this beginning, what I want to do is create a really vibrant, flowy ink background, and I'll probably use this for a negative space painting down the track. So I'll come in later on and go around some shapes. I'll just show you what I mean so you have just an example in your head before I get started. So the background that I'll be creating today is something similar to what I used in this spread here. So a really bright ink background that I can then come in and outline a shape using a different kind of supply. So to do that, I usually use my acrylic inks because they are really bold and a little bit punchier than watercolor, and they also dry in a permanent way so that they don't reactivate when I come over the top with another supply. So bringing in my inks, I'm just going to pick a few colors, and usually I'll go with something bright and then a couple of earthy tones as well. So I am going to start with ultramarine, maybe a little bit of this dark kind of phthalo green color. I've got a bit of burnt umber as well. This is a flesh tint, which I'm not really even sure what this will look like, but I might grab that too. That'll be a good starting point. And then to make it really quick and simple, I'm just going to add the ink to the page. I might just put a little bit of water down to start with, but not too much, just a few little blobs, which I will add some ink into. So I'm going to just dot the ink directly on the page in a few different areas. And I'll often combine an earthy color with another color just so that it does have a little bit of a kind of muted feel as well. So I'm just getting my dots going at this point, and then I'm going to get a big brush to move it around the page. And I just added a little bit of water where I'm adding in the ink, just because I don't want it to dry in those sections too quickly. So then I will take a big brush and just move that paint around and just let it go wherever it wants. See how the colors mingle. I might end up adding more colors in. It's a really quick process. I think I want a bit more blue in this spread, so I'll probably just add a bit more of this blue in a minute. I'm just taking another brush. So then just to finish off, another thing that I quite often do is just take some Neocolour 2 and splatter it through the wet paint. So I have a couple of lighter colours here. I'm just going to wet the end of the Neocolour 2. Just get it nice and wet, and then you can start to sort of splatter. And this can create some really nice effects too. So now I'll leave that one to dry. I said before that I'd probably use it for negative space painting, but it's got quite a lot of light and dark colours in it, so I may end up doing something completely different with this page, and there are some really beautiful kind of mingling areas. So I feel like it would be a nice one to come over the top maybe with some art making with some pens or something like that. So perhaps a different approach, and often that is the case when you work in this quite intuitive way. So another approach that you might want to use when you are starting a sketchbook is just to jump in with some collage. Let me find a spare page. I think that one might be full. So I have some collage papers here, and these are mostly greaseproof paper or deli paper, and I really like using thin papers when I'm working with collage. So what I'm going to do for this spread is just to cut up some shapes. Some of them are already cut up into shapes that I can add and just get something down quite quickly. And if I had a glue stick, I might use a glue stick, but I don't know where my glue stick is, so I will use my favourite gel medium, which is this golden soft gel gloss. I like this one because it has a nice soft, not too thick, not too thin consistency. And my favourite brushes for applying the glue are these Tim Holtz Distress brushes. Collage can be a great tool for composition and trying out different types of shapes and playing with scale, using big shapes and smaller shapes, just to come up with some ideas. And these papers that I'm using have been painted in a very similar way to I did the last spread, so just using acrylic ink. And again, I like the acrylic ink because it doesn't reactivate with the other supplies. So with the shape I just cut out, I was just trying to come up with something a little bit different to maybe what I would typically go for. So I've got this kind of squiggle happening. And then over here, I have this page, which is so unlike me, to just have red splatters. I don't use a lot of red in my work. But what I think I might do is cut some of these tiny little red dots out and stick a few of them down, because that way I'll have something that's a very different scale. I'm going to glue a piece of this in as well because I quite like the drippy dots that are on this piece. So that's a good place to let that collage dry and move on to another sketchbook. So there's some nice elements there that you can easily play with other supplies once it's dry. Some good, interesting shapes. Another approach that can be really great and very accessible is to start pages using pen. So quite often I will go through my sketchbooks and just do some drawings, some patterns, some art making, using things like Posca paint pens, these gel pens, anything like that that's quite easy to do. So or quite easy to use. So what I might do here is just start a little bit of a pattern And these Sakura gel pens are actually not permanent once dry. So if you add water over the top, they blend, but that can also create quite an interesting effect. So let's have a look at what we can do with these pens. So right now I'm just creating a very random pattern using circles and lines, but you could go as intricate or as simple with this as you like. Mandalas can be really nice. Botanical drawings, I often do those in my sketchbooks. You can do writing. You can add your own journal entries, poetry, lyrics of a song, anything like that with pen that you can then build into the layers of your mixed media piece. And I think with this pattern, I haven't even really lifted my hand off the page. I'm just doing it as a continuous line drawing, and that can be a good way to make the pattern a little bit more interesting, a little less rigid. Just letting it come out without too much of a worry about a plan or where it's heading. So I'll show you another thing that I've been doing, a start that I've been using lately, is to combine this with the Neocolor 2 crayons, which are also water soluble. So let's just take one of these and we'll do sort of similar things. Maybe another color as well. And then using some water, you can bring some water over and just activate everything with the water to see how the colors mingle. And then you can even use a scrapey tool just to move the water around. So over on this side, I'm going to continue with another approach that I often use, which is to use an intuitive style with watercolor paint. So I have my watercolor paints in front of me. I have a whole box of different colors, and I'm just going to choose some colors that tie in with this green theme and loosely apply them on this side. So I have this green gold color, and sometimes if I'm feeling particularly, what would you say, kind of lazy, I will just grab the color just using my brush out of the end of the watercolor. I've got a damp brush and just start to get some colors down on the page. And it's nice to work quickly so that you can get colours to blend together. And you might even bring, a bit over onto this page as well. Just treat this almost like one page, even though it does have the divider, the ring binder. I do prefer sketchbooks that don't have a ring binder, just because my natural way of working is to work with the whole spread. And I find it weird if the two don't connect. So this is undersea green that I'm using at the moment, which has quite a bit of granulation in it. And then I'll just sort of rummage through and see what else I have that I can add in. And sometimes I'll have a look at my sheets here that I have, my swatch sheets, to see if there's a colour that would tie in with this very green spread that I'm creating, or maybe a contrasting colour. Let me see, what am I thinking? Actually, I might use some of the colours in this Kuretake set because it does have quite a lot of nice greens and yellows in it. So I'm using this silicone tool just to manipulate the paint. So I'm pulling through this lighter colour, just pulling that through these darker areas to get a bit of contrast. I'm just using now the end of my brush just to add a little bit of line work through the wet paint. So you can see there how that dark green area's got a lot of nice wet paint there, so I can create a really nice pattern. You're just using the end of my brush. I'm just going to finish off by bringing a few of those colours just over onto this side as well. Learning from what I'm doing, so realising, you know what, I like this dark green, and maybe I can do a bit more of that scratching. So more than likely, you know, some of this that I put down initially will, more than likely, quite a bit of this that I put down at the beginning will get covered up. But you'll still see some of the details. So I could feel myself getting swept up in these two pieces and probably have gone beyond them just being backgrounds and have started to compose them a little bit. But that's the natural flow of art, and sometimes that's a good thing because you might sit down and think that you are just going to paint a background and next of all you painted a whole painting. So I think that's a good thing. But that's where I wanted to leave it today. I just wanted to share a few different ways that I've been starting pages in my sketchbook. I find all of these to be pretty easy access points, and they take you in all sorts of different directions. So they're really good kickstarters for your art. I'll leave some of the supplies that I used linked in the description if you are interested. And yeah, I just hope that you found something today that makes you want to run to wherever you make art and make a start.